The story begins with our protagonist having a discussion with his girlfriend about his everyday matters. He then receives a notification on his phone about a package that he ordered and decides to head home. He had placed an order for a webcam to live stream on YouTube after encouragement from his girlfriend, who claims she is good at chatting. As he sets up all the drivers for the camera, he is disappointed when he discovers that the camera doesn't seem to be functioning. When he reaches out to unplug it from his computer, he receives a deadly shock that fries his brain and ultimately kills him. However, he regains consciousness in a spiritual form, where he is shown all of his life's recollections. Upon realizing that he died so pathetically, he immediately reflects on his parents and his girlfriend, whom he has now left behind. Following that, he looks around and discovers a hovering YouTube icon, which reminds him of how he never began his streaming career. He gets frustrated at his lame death and aggressively presses the YouTube icon, which causes him to tumble into another reality. Surprisingly, he wakes up in the body of an infant in a Chinese household, perplexed as to how it all happened as his new parents rejoice in the arrival of their first child. 6 years have passed since his rebirth, and our protagonist, Zhao Ga-hui, addresses one of the maids, Hang, and inquires about the whereabouts of his parents. She reveals that they are out in the city examining new products, and Ga-hui leaves after promising to treat him to delicious cuisine later. Afterward, he expresses his dismay at having to act like a kid in front of them and decides to watch some YouTube till his parents return. He claims that since his rebirth, he has acquired the ability to view YouTube whenever he closes his eyes, and that this is caused by his death from a camera. He narrates how he was reborn as the lone son of the Zhao family, a Chinese marketing clan. Using his new ability, he discovers that time works in the exact same way it did in his previous life, leading him to wonder if his family and girlfriend have carried on from his passing after 6 years. He then recounts how YouTube aided him to learn Chinese swiftly, and how he was able to pass the time by watching different videos. He further reveals how the body odor of people of that era was unbearable for him for the first 6 years of his life, which led to him developing soap via his ability to watch YouTube. Later, he presents his new product to his family in order for them to sell it in their merchant business, but they are dissatisfied with his creation. Not because the soap is of poor quality, but because it is of such high caliber despite the fact that it contains inexpensive components. Because a product like this has the potential to revolutionize the soap industry, his parents conclude that it is far too valuable and would endanger his life. To protect their family from any kind of harm, Ga-hui's father chooses to seek the help of Zhuge, one of the 5 noble clans of the martial realm. In the evening, Ga-hui approaches Hang and asks her about the Zhuge clan his father mentioned. Hang is surprised how he is unaware of their history despite the fact that he learned to walk and talk so quickly, to which he replies that no one ever mentioned such things, so he never had the chance to learn them. After she reveals how these noble clans have a special art of fighting, they are visited by Shin, the branch director of the Zhuge clan. As Ga-hui introduces himself to Shin, he presents his accomplice, who happens to be his 5-year-old niece, Wu-hui. His father states that he has to talk business with Shin and suggests he takes Wu-hui around the place for a walk. As he walks her around the place, he implies that he feels like his 27-year-old previous self playing with a 5-year-old kid. Wu-hui then spots an assortment of tools in the backyard and requests information about them. These are the instruments Ga-hui used for producing the soap, which she inspects attentively. Ga-hui claims that his father utilizes these pieces of machinery and that if she disturbs them, she is going to get in trouble. However, she continues to pester him, making him wonder how she seems so mature and aware for her age. When he refuses to disclose the real intent of the instruments, Wu-hui proposes a game in which the loser must obey the winner. Ga-hui confidently accepts, and she explains the rules of the game, in which they have to play blindfolded tag in a confined area, with the person who exits the vicinity losing. As Wu puts on the blindfold, Ga-hui says he is able to read her like a book, but is taken aback to see a blue glow around her, as she takes a deep breath to concentrate. In some way, she pinpoints Ga-hui's exact location and starts approaching him ominously. Perplexed by her skills, he attempts to run around her, but regardless of where he moves, she seems to be behind him each time until he finally steps out of the circle. She makes fun of him for losing and then puts the blindfold on Ga-hui as it is his turn to be the seeker. Ga-hui also possesses a unique skill that permits him to live stream. This summons a camera that only he can see that reveals him everything around him regardless of the fact that he is blindfolded. He exploits this ability to surprise and locate Wu, ultimately knocking her out of the circle. She accepts her loss after a little outburst, and they both agree on a draw. Since he is unable to disclose the real intent of his instruments, he comes up with an alternative method to entertain her. A moment later, Shin observes Wu giggling and laughing as Ga-hui pursues her with a slime that he created using his soap contraption, which makes him pleased as Wu always had to conceal who she really was due to being in check by the family elders. Before they leave, Wu approaches Ga-hui and gives him a kiss of appreciation for his time, which makes him blush. After that, Ga-hui asks his father about the soap, and he immediately shuts him down by stating that he should be mindful of his words. He claims Shin can't hear him from afar, but he does due to his exceptional ability, making him intrigued by the Zhao family's secret. A few days later, the Zhao clan is bustling with activity as employees work feverishly to pack deliveries. The parcels contain the soaps, which will be sent to the Zhuge clan and sold under their brand. The retail scene is teeming with merchants and people eager to purchase the new product, but the contract between the two clans requires Zhao to remain anonymous in all deals. Meanwhile, Hang is informed about the daily visit of escort warriors who are always accompanied by Wu Hui. She seems to have a liking for their son Ga-hui, and Hang is assigned to be on duty to make sure they don't get hurt. She enthusiastically takes the role and fetches an assortment of treats for the two, assuring that the kids will be delighted to have them. However, she is surprised to find them in the practice arena, where they are fiercely sparring with each other. As they fiercely practice their martial arts, Hang realizes that these kids are not in need of her care at all. After a hard-fought battle, Wu manages to beat Ga-hui and tie the score 50-50. Afterward, she proposes that they now develop their Kai. Hearing this, Ga-hui is dissatisfied and recalls how, after training in the martial hall for an entire month, he was unable to create any ki and was told that it is not fit for him. Nevertheless, he adheres to when Wu claims that she is capable of instructing him more efficiently than anyone in the martial hall. After she makes him recite verses of the breathing and cultivation technique, Ga-hui displays evidence of flowing ki inside his body. However, as soon as she removes her hands from his back, Ga-hui loses all stamina and flow. Wu claims that if he continues to practice, he will build up endurance, but Ga-hui insists on doing only physical exercise. Later, as the two head out to buy sweets with Hang, Wu attempts to commiserate with Ga-hui for his failure to master Kai. She explains how she was unable to make friends before him owing to her noble background and promises to train him every day until he eventually learns to master his Kai. As Wu runs away in embarrassment, Ga-hui is delighted to have people that care for him both in this life and his previous one. As Wu thanks him from afar, disaster strikes when Ga-hui notices a man abducting Wu. Just then, another man creeps up behind him and kidnaps him as well. Their true aim was Ga-hui, but the kidnappers decide to include Wu because her outfit suggests she comes from a wealthy household. Meanwhile, Hang returns with plenty of snacks for both of them, but she panics after she discovers only a piece of Ga-hui's clothing that he had left behind as a clue. Meanwhile, Ga-hui uses his camera to discover that they are in a carriage that is leaving town. Both Ga-hui and Wu are imprisoned in a cellar at night, and the kidnapper's head instructs one of the guards to keep an eye on the door. Ga-hui spies on them and uses his skills to untie the ropes, and the two begin to discuss how to escape from this place. After failing to find a strategy, the two contemplate if they will ever be able to escape this place. They cannot even fight their way through despite having excellent fighting abilities, as their age is the most significant factor holding them back. When they hear someone approaching the door, they retie themselves to avoid being caught. The door opens to reveal one of the guards, who explain that despite being warned not to get close to the kids, he is unable to restrain himself. As he approaches them, Wu breaks free of the ropes and reveals that her clan will not let it slide if he lays a hand on them. The guard becomes nervous when he learns she is from the Zhuge clan and her father is the great noble Chun Hang. However, despite his fear of the nobles, he claims that no one will ever find out if he kills her here. Suddenly, Ga-hui sneaks behind him and kicks him in the nuts, followed by Wu's key charge punch to his face. As the guard lies unconsciously, Ga-hui suggests they get away before anyone else arrives. However, their elation is short-lived when they see that the guard was only knocked down temporarily. As he knocks Ga-hui and Wu-hua to the ground, Ga-hui uses his remaining strength to throw a pebble at the guard's head, infuriating him further. After being beaten up with such brutality, Ga-hui recalls how he had the exact same feeling 6 years ago when he died and recollects how things took a dark turn as the both of them were laughing just this morning. He doesn't want to die so soon, but states that he will accept death once again if he is given a second chance to save Wu Hui. As his eyes close, he receives notifications from YouTube informing him of the updated Go Live function. The program additionally tells him that he will be featured on the recommended playlist and asks him if he wants to use this feature. He accepts because he has no other choice, and comments from other users begin to flood his mind. Just then, he awakens from his slumber and discovers that his body is filled with ki, and realizes that he now has a second chance to make amends for his mistakes. As Ga-hui wonders how he is able to manifest Kai, he recalls Wu's teachings from the Dairy of Heaven and Earth, accumulating the strength to challenge the guard once more. When he notices Ga-hui is back on his feet, with confidence in his eyes, he approaches him in an attempt to end his hopes. However, something has definitely changed as Ga-hui easily evades all of his attacks. As the comments from his live stream join in on the action, he wonders if he should punch him to death or knock him out, but ultimately kicks him in the nuts again and continues to do so until he is completely knocked out. He then turns his attention to Wu-hua, but has lost the strength to even stand up at this point. However, he somehow approaches her and discovers that she is unconscious. Luckily, her pulse and breath are just fine, which is a relief for our protagonist. Despite having little to no strength left, he carries her on his back and leaves the cellar. After trekking for nearly an hour into the jungle, Ga-hui wonders why he can now use his ki, and what is the connection between broadcasting and his power. As he wonders about his newly acquired powers and a way to his homeland, the kidnappers catch up to him, placing further problems on his arsenal. At this difficult hour, Ga-hui wonders if he should have hidden Wu-hu somewhere before looking for a way home. One of the kidnappers marches towards him intending to kill, but gets his arm cut off by none other than Shin, who has arrived with a whole patrol to rescue his niece. As Shin effortlessly defeats all of the abductors, Ga-hui notices Hang with the patrol, which makes him realize that his idea of leaving back a piece of his cloth had worked. After recognizing that Wu is safe from all harm and seeing the last bandit being slayed by Shin, Ga-hui collapses from fatigue. Later, he awakens under a different roof and discovers his ex-girlfriend standing next to him. He is both happy and startled to be returning to his prior life, but soon realizes that it is all a dream. His girlfriend scolds him for dying so early and states that it was very difficult for her to console his parents. However, it is a relief for him since he gets to say a final goodbye to his girlfriend, who requests him to be nice with the people of his new world. As she dissipates in his memories, Ga-hui wakes up from his slumber, and both Hang and Wu embrace him with tears. Hang states it is her fault for letting them out of sight, but he states that everything is all right and she shouldn't worry since they are safe now. Ga-hui discovers that he has been sleeping for 2 days, and Shin enters at just the right time to thank him for keeping Wu safe. After a brief conversation, Shin dispatches Hang and Wu to retrieve the family head and a doctor. After they've left, he asks Ga-hui how he learned their clan's martial style, which stuns him because Shin never saw him fight. Ga-hui panics when asked this question, and Shin recalls how he learned this truth after taking Ga-hui's pulse earlier and seeing faint evidence of their clan's secret technique. He promises not to punish Ga-hui and kindly requests that he reveals the name of the technique he has learned. Ga-hui claims it is the art of divine schemes, and Shin replies that this skill is not meant to be taught to outsiders. As Ga-hui shivers in fear, Shin smiles at him and states that his future will rely on what he does with his newly earned skill. As he walks away, he predicts that Ga-hui will have a close relationship with his huge clan in the near future. Just then, both of his parents walk in and embrace him as their faces are filled with concern. Ga-hui apologizes for causing them worries, and they invite the doctor to examine him. The doctor reports that everything appears to be in order, and that the internal wounds are healing thanks to Shin's assistance. His parents commend Shin, who replies that he should be the one thanking them because their son saved his niece's life. They then decide to let Ga-hui alone to recuperate and recover from his injuries. In bed, he notices that the live stream he created 2 days ago is still running and recalls receiving ki when a viewer joined his feed. He wonders if there is a method to preserve the ki without the stream, but immediately discovers that when he turns off the stream, all of his ki departs. He restarts it to test if his ki has returned and eventually concludes that he can only use his ki while broadcasting. He also discovers that ki is accumulated when he broadcasts and converses with the viewers that participate. Meanwhile, a rumor about him grows throughout the clan as he communicates with his audience in English. Ga-hui's family claims that he babbles to himself in strange languages and that he may have injured his head in the event that occurred. Everyone has a different theory regarding his condition, so he chooses to address it in the presence of everyone at the dinner table. He begins by explaining that he has activated his Ki, which surprises his entire family. When questioned, he recalls helping an old beggar, who in turn gave him a book about his secret martial art. He claimed to have read the book at home and that strange words popped into his thoughts. He goes on to explain how these words came to him during the situation and how the simple thought of rescuing Wu helped him activate his Ki. This resolves the issue of him mumbling words to himself, so the clan member no longer considers him insane. All of this is obviously a deception to prevent false rumors from spreading in his family, but the good news is that everyone in his family appears to be quite happy for him, so there is no need for him to disclose the truth. Wu inquires about the name of the art, to which Ga-hui responds that it is known as the subscription art, a term she has never heard before. Ga-hui says to Wu that they can practice their ki together like she's always wanted, but Wu, with a sad expression on her face, says she must now go back to his clan, which leaves our poor protagonist in disbelief. A few weeks pass, and Ga-hui embarrasses himself in the restroom after realizing that he had forgotten to turn his stream off before entering. He rushes back to his room and covers himself in a blanket while wondering how his friend Wu-hui is doing. He recalls his last meeting with Wu, which was a whole month ago, and she told him she has to leave because her father has ordered her to return. Ga-hui understands that her father has all the reason to be worried and asks Wu to go back and calm his heart. However, Wu says that she does not want to return, to which Ga-hui promises that he will visit her himself next time. And just like that, a whole month goes and Ga-hui grows an attachment to his live stream viewers. He also receives a violation warning for streaming in the restroom, and his fans have been teasing him ever since. He spends the next few days streaming all of his daily activities such as eating and training, and continues to gain additional viewers. Yet he is hollow on the inside because he misses his friend Wu Huai, from whom he hasn't heard in a month. Just then, he is startled by Shin, who has come to speak with the Zhao clan about the soap. He gives Ga-hui a letter from Wu, which states that her father will not let her leave their clan grounds until she becomes a granny. The letter also expresses how much she misses Ga-hui and wishes to see him as soon as possible. Shin describes how Wu's separation from Ga-hui has caused a commotion across the clan and claims that writing him a letter will help to calm her down. Ga-hui says a letter is unnecessary since he will accompany him to their clan so he can meet her in person. When he arrives at the Zhuge clan, he turns on his stream and shows the land to his viewers, who are taken aback by its beauty. On their way to meet her, Shin mentions that Wu is his brother's lone daughter after 3 sons and that she has a soft spot for his daughter. However, a 6-year-old boy has captured all of Wu's attention, which has clearly impacted his brother. He goes on to add that his brother has been creating reasons to keep Wu from visiting him and that he should be alert because he might put him to the test. Wu's father is well known across the clan for his wisdom, so Shin urges Ga-hui to keep his talents hidden even when given the opportunity to demonstrate them. Later in the reception hall, Ga-hui was served food and is asked if it is to his liking. After appreciating the taste, he inquires as to when he will be able to visit Wu Hui, only to be told that he must rest for the day. Just then, he recalls how Shin told him about a test and steps out of the hall to find out that the scene looks completely different than how it looked when he had entered the hall. The woman who gave her food encourages him to rest for the day, but he quickly spots her deception. She reveals that Ga-hui is locked in the rightful returning butterfly formation, which is used to evacuate children, and it will take a long time for him to crack it open. He declares that getting through this is a breeze and approaches the hall's door, only to be whisked back to where he began. The lady discloses she is the formation's guardian and keeps requesting that Ga-hui rests for the day. However, he is anxious to see Wu and challenges him to a bet. Meanwhile, a servant informs the clan head Zhu Jiai that Ga-hui has entered the butterfly formation, prompting him to say that he should suffer a little for coming here to see his daughter. He reveals that the formation changes at random every 2 hours and that only a few people, even within the clan, can find a route out. Jia claims that even he would require nearly an hour to pass through, so there is absolutely no way a 6-year-old boy will be able to travel through it. He claims Ga-hui will beg to be saved in a short time, and Shin, who has just entered the room with a look of concern, asks Jai to treat their guests with care. He sternly tells Shin to shut up and asks why he should accept a boy like him into the clan. Shin claims that if Wu Hui discovers out, she will turn against him, but he assures her that she will only appreciate him for doing this. Just then, Wu Hui frantically walks in and asks his father if he has really trapped Ga-hui in the Jang formation room. He asks her to calm down and claims that she will shortly discover how unsuitable he is for her. However, to everyone's disbelief, a servant walks in and reveals that Ga-hui had escaped the formation with both his eyes closed. As they are all jaw-drop at his feet, Ga-hui confidently walks in and introduces himself to the clan head. Both Mu and Ga-hui are overjoyed to meet one another, and Gai Zhuge gets frustrated as her daughter is thrilled to see someone other than him. Wu and her father are arguing when her mother, Nangang Jia-yak, walks in and takes charge of the situation. He asks Jai not to be upset about a child and apologizes on his husband's behalf. Just then, Ga-hui mentions how he was told that the Zhuge clan head is wise and frequently challenges visitors who pay him a visit. He then bravely issues a challenge to the clan head, who joyously accepts, thinking he will be able to show him his place once and for all. He goes on to add that if he loses, he will never enter the clan state without permission, but if he wins, he is free to do whatever he wants. He challenges him to a game of Go, and despite his opponent being the best player in the martial realm, he defeats him multiple times with the help of his live audience. One of his viewers first used a cheat engine to copy all of Zhuge's moves into a computer, which in turn told him the best move possible, which was relayed to him through chat. As Ga-hui was busy conversing with his chat, Zhuge resigns from the game to everyone's surprise, and Wu runs in to embrace her dear friend. Afterward, the restrictions on Wu are lifted, and the two start spending more time together. Both of them got extremely close in that time, and after 4 more years, Ga-hui's 11th birthday was upon us. Before unboxing his birthday presents, he brings out a mirror and does a face reveal for the first time to his viewers, who are delighted to see his face. However, some viewers find it hard to believe that the channel they have been watching for years is run by an 11-year-old boy. He thinks that despite making content that would have made him a popular YouTuber, his subscriber count only went from 30 to 2,000 in the span of 4 years. One of the reasons that were hindering his progress was the language barrier, as everyone around him spoke Chinese, but the biggest issue he's facing is the first-person camera that has been locked on top of his head ever since he gained the ability to stream. Just then, a few of his viewers ask him to review one of his previous videos that reveal a clocked girl and an old man who at first seemed ordinary to him. However, he's shocked to see the girl stealing from the locals, which makes him wonder how the viewers spotted the thieves, since he himself glossed over it while editing. The two work in such sync and speed that even Ga-hui, whose eyes are trained with Kai, is unable to notice it. He further sees that the old man is much faster than the girl and notices that he returns all the pouches to the owners after the girl steals them, which is even more impressive. Excited to unveil the mystery of the two, he decides to go to the market to face them in person. Ever since the kidnapping incident, his parents have always set escorts with him for his safety. Just then, he spots the two in the distance and prepares to face them when they approach him. As the girl tries to snatch his pouch, he grabs her hand at the spot and compliments her for having a pretty hand. As the girl blushes in embarrassment, the old man accompanying him attacks Ga-hui, which terrifies him, but the attack is blocked by his escorts. Despite being covered by the guards, the old man manages to snatch Ga-hui's pouch, but since he has already filled the pouches with rocks, this tells the old man that he has been waiting for them. The escorts step in once again, and the man apologizes, claiming he had no idea that the kid belonged to the Zhao clan. After the two have left, the escorts ask him not to meddle with such people because the master was way too strong even for them, and it would have been an issue if he hadn't stepped down on his own. Later in the night, as Ga-hui was about to fall asleep, the old man appears in his room out of nowhere, which surprises him and all his viewers. The man is impressed at Ga-hui's ability to spot his presence despite having his eyes closed and claims that he was intrigued by his abilities. He was unable to sleep due to excitement and decided to pay him a visit himself. He further thought that Ga-hui was a huge clan, but is surprised to learn that he simply belongs to the Zhao clan. Ga-hui asks him who he is and how he was able to sneak into his room, and the old man introduces himself as the Thief God, who has retired from martial arts for 10 long years. Ga-hui has no idea who Thief God is, who jumps out of the window and asks him to follow. He follows him outside, where he starts approaching him with intent, prompting Ga-hui to be on guard, thinking that he is going to attack him. As he menacingly reaches out with his hand, Ga-hui closes his eyes thinking he is getting his ass whooped, but the Thief God starts squishing his cheeks and inspecting his body. He then offers Ga-hui to become his disciple and states that no one will be able to touch him if he trains for 10 years with him. Ga-hui is shocked about the time period, but the old man claims he gave him the least amount of time considering his current body shape. After consulting with his live viewers, he decides that his desire to become stronger is not big enough to train and travel with the old man, which shocks the old man since he has never wanted a student before. The Thief God says it is a shame since his granddaughter Bin was looking forward to it and leaves him with a book that teaches his original body technique called Shadow Lotus. He says he is the only one who knows these methods, and if Ga-hui manages to learn all of them the next time they meet, he will teach him a movement technique that goes hand in hand with it. If he is able to combine the two techniques, no one will ever be able to touch him, let alone hurt him. Ga-hui asks when their next meetup will be, and the Thief God leaves by saying that they will eventually meet as long as they are alive. He then disappears out of Ga-hui's sight, leaving him with the book, which he is unable to understand. The next day, he mentions the Thief King to Hang, who tells him how he is a legend who used to steal from the corrupt and give it to the poor. People were divided on if doing this was even just, but Ga-hui states that he was not a bad person at all. While he discusses this with Hang, Wu-hui appears, and seeing her makes him realize how impossible it was for him to leave her behind and train for 10 years. But her expression shows that Ga-hui has done something wrong, and she immediately scolds him for holding another girl's hand. She states that the escort told her everything and continues to pester him about this situation until he shows her the book which he received from the old man. Her entire attention is diverted by the book as she finds it incredible and states that the techniques inside it are much stronger than the ones she taught him. When she asks how he got the book, he lies about receiving it as a birthday present. He thinks to himself that there is no need for her to know the truth, and Wu, being too eager to explore the book, urges Ga-hui to train with her immediately. While they leave to practice, Zhao family is having some unexpected visitors in their land. Hang rushes into the arena with worry on her face and reveals that the great Sir of Accumulated Yang Fist Zhu Dan-muk has visited their clan. Wu recalls the name while putting Ga-hui in a submission hold and reveals that Zhu Dan is the master of unarmed combat, who once had great influence over the Shaanxi province. Zhu Dan has no business in the martial realm, which makes her wonder why he is here. Just then, Hang reveals that Zhu Dan has decided to live with the Zhao family from now on. Meanwhile, Zhao asks Zhu Dan why a master of his caliber would want to live with their poor family, who reveals that it is only for the sake of his daughter. He claims he lost all will to live when his wife passed away 10 years ago, which made him leave the martial world. If it wasn't for the child his wife left behind, he would have been gambling and drinking like a loser and would have been living his life like a dead man. After that, he asks his daughter to introduce herself, who happens to be none other than Bin, the Thief God's granddaughter. As Ga-hui spies on their conversation using his camera, he recalls seeing Bin before but is unsure of where he saw her. Zhao asks why they chose the Zhao clan, as many better places would have offered escort, to which he says that he wanted a life far away from the matters of the martial world to guarantee Bin's safety. Zhu Dan has spent his entire life fighting. It would be meaningless to stay in a martial clan where he will always be worried about Bin's safety. He further reveals how he asked around the place about Zhao family and everyone told him that they were kind and generous, which urged him to entrust his daughter to them. After that, he mentions their son Ga-hui, who is around the same age as Bin, and looks directly into his camera, which terrifies him as he is the only one who is able to see it. Later, the Zhao family officially accepts Bin and Judan into their family, and Judan begins helping around the place in the next few days, which reveals his kind and soft nature despite his tough appearance. Even outside of Judy House, Judan meticulously patrolled both the exterior and interior of the manor and earned the title Man of Chivalrous Spirit. Soon enough, due to all his efforts, Judan became the most trusted person in the Zhao clan, but his daughter, on the other hand, stayed as grumpy and distant as she has always been. To make friends with her, Ga-hui introduces Bin to his younger sister Sugui, but she shows no signs of interest and continues to act rude and distant. Wu whispers something in Ga-hui's ear to make her curious, thinking she would follow them, but instead, she runs away in the opposite direction. Later, while distributing sweets among the kids, Ga-hui meets up with Judan, who discusses her daughter's distant behavior. Judan states that Bin had trouble making friends due to her father's bad habits and requests Ga-hui to try again for the sake of his daughter. He gladly accepts and takes both of them to the training grounds, and Bin asks Judan why he brought her here. Bin had told Judan she would take care of her no-friends situation herself, but seeing that she has made no progress, his father has decided to help her. As Ga-hui and Wu-hui prepare to spar, he reveals how their training is no longer a fun contest ever since their kidnapping incident 5 years ago. They both faced the fear of death and helplessness against evil and promised each other to do their best to become stronger despite being injured many times. Ga-hui asks Wu to attack first, and his chat is already annoyed as they will have to experience the dizzy and blur first-person camera as the two spar fiercely. As Wu and Ga-hui demonstrate their midfield martial art with vast ki and fancy-based moments, Judan and Bin inspect thoroughly. As their fists clash with strong ki blasting from their palms, this is the first time their collective martial art is revealed to the outer world. After a fierce battle, Wu manages to land an attack on Ga-hui, which makes Judan wonder if all of their spars are this physical. Both of them have a great form but still have a long way to go. Just then, Ga-hui performs a takedown on Wu, and Judan immediately steps in to stop the spar. He states that fighting on the ground is called the lazy donkey roll, which is considered highly disgraceful in the martial realm. Ga-hui wonders why Wu never told him any of that despite being knowledgeable in this aspect, and looks over to Bin, who is disgusted at the sight of such foul play. Afterward, Judan compliments both of them for showing great skills and asks if they would like advice from him. He addresses Wu first and commends her for having a flawless foundation and ki control. He then tells her that she lacks adaptability due to her lack of combat experience and states how she could have used different techniques to evade Ga-hui's final attack. Then he turns his attention to Ga-hui, whose fighting style cannot be called a proper martial art. Rather, his simple technique can be compared to the vagabond. He then asks if Ga-hui has learned the martial art of the military, which he denies. Following that, Judan asks Ga-hui to evenly distribute ki through his body and manually fixes his posture. After doing so, he asks him to take a blow in the air, and the results shock everyone, including himself. The power Ga-hui just witnessed is the result of a perfect sync between technique and harmony, which amazes Wu as Judan has imparted a secret revelation to them just now. Judan states there will be more opportunities to learn in the future and suggests more sessions like these in the future, which they happily accept. A week later, Judan has not visited the training hall once despite asking for more sparring sessions, which is making Ga-hui impatient. He asks Bin why his father isn't coming to train him, but she continues her distant behavior with him. However, this time he keeps pestering her and proposes that they let go of this issue between them and be nice to each other. Bin asks if he wants to become his father's disciple as he is always looking for him while training, and states that she will talk to her father about him. In the excitement to train with Judan, he grabs Bin's hand and flaps her arms, which leaves her embarrassed on the floor. At night, he enters his dorm and brings in his favorite drink, which he learned from Bin earlier. Judan, keen as ever, realizes that Ga-hui has a request to make and asks him to spill it out. Ga-hui requests to accept him as his student, and Judan states he knew Ga-hui will visit. However, Ju states that he will have to promise him 3 things if he wants to become his disciple. The first is to never torment the weak once he becomes stronger. The second is to never give up training no matter how hard it is, and the third would be to obey every command of his master, even if it means stepping into the flames of hell. He surely is worried about the third condition, but accepts it after considering that he will never have an opportunity like this one. Just then, Judan asks if he has been practicing the Shadow Lotus technique he gave him, which shocks him as he recalls how Hang told him that no one really knows what the thief god looks like. Just then, Judan reveals his true form, which turns out to be none other than the thief god himself. He asks Ga-hui to keep the promises he just made, and Ga-hui just then realizes that Bin is the same girl who was accompanying the old man when he first encountered them. Thief God states how he has told Bin to change her appearance multiple times, but she insists on sticking to her original face, which upsets her as her true identity was supposed to be a secret. As she heads out in embarrassment, the Thief God asks Ga-hui to continue their conversation from where they left off 2 months ago. He wonders if the Thief God killed the real Judan to take his appearance, but he scolds him and reveals that Judan was just one of his identities during his days in the martial world. He further reveals how he had to visit his hidden abode to get his handguard, which took him a whole month of traveling, and that is why he couldn't visit the Zhao clan immediately. Ga-hui asks why he waited so long to reveal his true identity, and he explains how his pride was hurt after he was rejected by him. So he had to make Ga-hui choose him on his own terms. He wanted to make sure Ga-hui was actually worthy of being his student, and luckily for him, he seems to have passed the test. Judan states that even though Ga-hui's martial art is incomplete, he has enough talent to make up for it, which excites our protagonist. While Bin overhears their conversation with a bright smile on her face, Ga-hui is very delighted to have the old man training him from his own house. The next day, he takes back the appearance of Judan and informs Ga-hui's parents about the whole incident, who seem very delighted about the news. Later, Judan reveals how his identity should be kept hidden because he has made a lot of enemies in his past life, and people will gather around the Zhao clan like clouds if anyone finds out that he is living here. This will put everyone, including Wu, in danger, so he strictly tells Ga-hui to only address him as Judan. Just then, he notices weird movement in Judan's clothing and becomes terrified, thinking he is about to change forms again. However, it turns out to be a cute squirrel that Judan keeps as a pet in his clothing. The squirrel's name is Broly, a mythical being that is said to have a lifespan of 30 years. Broly is faster than peak martial artists and is intelligent enough to understand human language. As Ga-hui converses with his live viewers, Judan recalls how he kept mumbling even when they first met and asks him about it. Ga-hui plays it off as having a condition, and Judan checks his body to see if he has any problems. He learns that on top of having a normal body, Ga-hui's ki is much purer than any ki he has ever felt before. Afterward, Judan asks him to demonstrate what he has learned about the Shadow Lotus technique, and Ga-hui prepares his attack. As he marches, Judan teleports behind him multiple times, but despite failing to land an attack on him, he receives compliments from his tutor. Although Ga-hui is getting better each day, his counterpart Wu Hui possesses amazing talent and belongs to a stronger origin. Despite all his efforts, if Ga-hui works at the rate he is working now, he will never be able to match the strength of his partner, which will eventually break the relationship they have. This thought makes him worry about his future, but Judan tells him not to worry, as everything he took him in accounting for all these factors, and that everything he has learned so far with Wu will feel like child's play once he starts training with him. Later, Wu asks Ga-hui to train with her, but he states that they will have to train less from now on due to his training lessons with Judan. To his surprise, Wu is very understanding about his situation and states that Judan will be able to teach him much better than she ever could. As he promises to spend the remainder of his time with her, Bin spies on them with an unpleasant expression on her face. Later in the training hall, Ga-hui thanks Bin for all her help and suggests that they become friends from here on out. As the old man is nowhere to be found, Bin states that Judan will not be able to make it today. She then asserts that Ga-hui addresses her by the title of senior sister even when she is younger than him. She argues that she has spent more time training with Judan, hence she is his senior, and Ga-hui abides by her request. She claims that training with her is similar to training with Judan, and also states that she can help with the training Ga-hui does with Wu. Y'all see where this is going, right? Meanwhile, Judan returns from his meeting and decides to check up on Ga-hui to see what he is up to. As he enters the training hall, thinking how nice it would be if Bin and his student got along, he notices Ga-hui curled up on the floor. He then sees Bin, who smacks Ga-hui in the face and leaves in embarrassment. Judan approaches him and asks what transpired this, and Ga-hui explains how Bun got upset when he proposed that they practice the neutralization technique he has been working on with Wu Hui. Judan says that a youngling like him shouldn't be lusting over women at his age, but that was not Ga-hui's intention in the first place. Judan explains that there is a hand technique that neutralizes the opponent called acupuncture and scolds him for wanting to fight on the floor. Just then, he performs the technique on Ga-hui, who falls to the floor and is unable to move his body. Judan asks him to stay still as he will release him soon, but is shocked to see that Ga-hui has immediately broken free from his technique. He asks how he managed to break free, but Ga-hui himself has no idea how he did it. Judan then places his hands on Ga-hui's chest and states that the size of his danshin is always changing. Danshin is the center of life force in humans, and Judan wonders if Ga-hui is able to change its size willingly. Ga-hui wonders if all of his previous streams are considered his danshin and figures that by swapping out spare ki, he can do things like hide or change the size of his life force. Afterward, Judan asks him to proceed with his training, and he tells him what martial arts he will be learning from him. He mentions stances and explains that they are postures and movements that fit a specific situation. They are made in a way that the body reacts on its own, and the martial art Ga-hui uses has an essence of stance. Even though stances were developed according to the flow of ki, it is also true that the unnecessary moments increase with them as well. In the modern day, many people learn stances without understanding their true purpose, and these stances are made for people who have ki. However, the stance Ga-hui uses is different as it is made for those that possess no ki, and hence is very efficient compared to the others. He then proceeds to explain how he will be perfecting all of Ga-hui's stances, so it all becomes one martial art, and thus begin the days of his harsh training. A few days have passed, and both Wu and Bin are eager to spend some time with Ga-hui to the point that they have developed a light grudge between themselves. As they approach him to ask how he is doing, he takes his robe off in front of them, which embarrassed the two. Just then, Hang walks into the hall and states that some guests from the Nangang clan have arrived to discuss the newly created Thousand Martial Academy. Meanwhile, the young master of the Nangang clan introduces himself as Hyun, followed by his escort Mian, who is in charge of the affairs within the martial world. He states that he has something to discuss with Judan and asks Zhao to accompany them in their conversation. As the elders leave, Ga-hui and Hyun get accustomed to each other, and he even introduces his younger sister to him. Meanwhile, Ga-hui recalls that Wu's mother is the daughter of the Nangang clan, meaning Hyun is her cousin, yet she is nowhere to be found. Later, as the cousins meet, Ga-hui spies on them using his ability to learn that Hyun is terrified of Wu due to her bossy attitude. She says how Hyun will handle the martial academy if he cannot even face her, which makes Ga-hui think if he can get entry into the academy as well. Meanwhile, Mian offers Judan to teach the kids in the academy as no one can rival his skill, but he refuses because he has already given up on the martial life for the safety of his daughter. Mian says he understands Ju's circumstances but asks him to consider it again as it will take some time for the academy to be up and running. He then sternly tells them not to say a word about their academy to anyone since it could prove troublesome if the demonic sector gets the gist of it. However, in the evening, Ju explains everything to Ga-hui, who then asks about the new rebellious leader of the demonic sect. Ju explains how the previous leader, Yeonji, had a peaceful disposition and would only stay within the boundary of his sect, but their new leader named 7000 Azura is famous for his violence and cruelty. Azura would not be satisfied with the current level of their power and would definitely cause chaos in the world. After the Nangang clan members have left, the Zhao family is visited by Shin, who takes Wu Hui back to their land for indoor training. Just only 3 months after the crowning of the new king, portents of war started appearing in Xinjiang and the Blue Sea. Shin explains that the clan has decided to hasten the establishment of the academy to prepare the youth for war, and Wu has to return home since Juge is planning to pass down the clan's secrets to her. Although all sects are preparing for war, their inner grudge has made them turn their backs on each other. If they all gather under the same roof, not only will they teach each other different techniques, but will also create good ties with each other. Wu does not want to be separated from Ga-hui and asks him to join the academy with her, but Shin scolds her for dragging a non-martial into their personal affairs. However, Ga-hui expresses his wish to join the academy, and after getting all the support from his parents, he decides to go with Wu and Shin. Just then, Bin marches in with Ju, stating her wish to accompany them as well, and Shin states he will inform them once he hears from the academy. Ju decides to stay behind to watch over the clan, and thus the three set their eyes on the Thousand Martial Academy. Some time passes, and Ga-hui reveals how, due to him having a much stronger ki compared to 5 years ago, his channel has grown in numbers, allowing him to use a third-person camera instead of the first-person one, which was always stuck on top of his head. Later, he returns to a hut with a boar on his shoulders and grills the meat alongside Bin for food. He reveals how their training became much hard ever since Wu left, and they had to learn survival in a hut prepared in a forest far away from any human contact. There, Ju spends a decent amount of time teaching them all kinds of skills necessary to become strong fighters. And thus, after intense training, Ga-hui managed to master all his techniques at the age of 17 into one martial art, which he calls the subscription fist arts. In all this time, Ga-hui has also learned to make various meals, which not even Ju has eaten despite his adventures to the Central Plains. Ga-hui asks if he has been to the Imperial Palace before, and Ju claims he once visited it 10 years ago. The Imperial Palace is the place where the worst villains gather, so Ju wanted to visit and teach them a lesson. Ga-hui asks what kind of a person the leader of the palace is, and Ju claims that the Emperor Yuje was in his 80s 10 years ago, yet he still lusted over women and had dozens of children. Yu has not named his successor despite being in his 90s, and the conflict for the throne between his own children gets worse and worse. Ju visited the palace around the time he both his daughter and son-in-law and had to leave behind the martial world to take care of Bin. After that, he mentions how a messenger informed him that the academy will be finished real soon, and that they will continue the rest of their training after returning to the Zhao clan. Later, before leaving, he advises both Ga-hui and Bin to train a bit on their own since they have mastered the basics, and urges Bin to train hard if she doesn't want to fall behind the caliber of Wu Hui. While Bin is frustrated for being compared to Wu, Ga-hui is delighted at the thought of finally being able to meet her after several years. He recalls how Wu gave him a bracelet woven from the moon moth, which clears one's head and helps in learning martial arts. As the two wear the matching bracelet, Wu states she will miss him a lot and proceeds to embrace him in her arms. Before the two part ways, she asks him not to get too friendly with Bin and urges him to never forget about her. Later, he visits the Zhuge clan where Wu's father tells him that her training would be going on for longer than he had thought. Ga-hui was unable to see her today, but Zhuge gives him a book that Wu had written for him and he leaves the palace to come again some other day. As he leaves, Wu suddenly comes out of hiding and asks his father if he was longing for her or not. She purposely did not meet Ga-hui because she wanted to see if he was missing her as much as she was missing him, and his father realizes that the bracelet around his wrist was her work. Since they are wearing matching bracelets, Zhuge asks her to hide her wrist as it can be humiliating for them. But Wu doesn't even listen as she is lost in the thought of her Ga-hui. Meanwhile, Zhuge gathers Ga-hui and Bin and asks them to prepare for a small treasure hunt at night. He claims that the test will be easy for them since they are much stronger now, but when the night approaches, the test seems to be much more difficult than they had anticipated. The task is to retrieve a hidden treasure inside the honor-resident Moon and his daughter's room without getting caught. The treasure is spread across 2 rooms, and it is totally up to them to decide how they want to divide it among themselves. Bin states she could not sense any experts guarding the area and rushes in after saying that it will be far too easy for her. The two jump into the palace and thus begin Ga-hui's first mission as a thief. As the guards patrol the area, Bin easily sneaks by them. However, there's a master among them who senses her key and asks his subordinates to check the perimeter. Bin barely avoids him and lays her eyes on the daughter Joan's room, which is located at the heart of the palace. She sneaks into her room to find her missing and grabs onto the treasure box. Just then, she hears footsteps approaching from a distance and decides to hide in the room's closet. Just then, she sees a man carrying the Gyeong in his arms as they are both aiming to secretly spend the night together. Bin is terrified of getting caught and closes the closet door, which makes enough noise to alert the couple. While the guy is about to catch Bin hiding in the closet, Ga-hui has already snuck out with the treasure box and is waiting for his partner in crime. Just then, he notices the hustle among guards who are heading toward the lady's room and realizes that Bin has been caught in the act. Bin has been knocked out and tied to a chair while his father asks Jung to go through everything she saw. He then enters her room to see if anything has been stolen, but only finds a naked guide whom her daughter was planning to spend the night with. Since everyone is distracted by the naked man in Gyeong's room, Ga-hui uses this opportunity to free Bin and escape with her. On their run, Bin wakes up from her slumber and panics as Ga-hui is holding her in his arms the same way the guy was holding Jung. However, he assures her that she is safe and asks her to stay in her arms until they completely lose the pursuers, to which she abides with a blush on her face. The next day, Ju scolds Bin for getting caught as he always considered Bin to have better stealth than Ga-hui and asks her how she got caught so he can give her a piece of advice. However, she refuses to say anything after what she saw last night and gets more scolding from the old man. Afterward, he asks Ga-hui to hand him the treasure boxes and opens one of them to bind a pair of black shadow gauntlets. He claims they are made from the scales of the steel-armored serpent, and the guy who made the crimson yang, which Ju uses himself, is the one who crafted these. Since Ga-hui is an expert in bare-hand combat, these gauntlets will be a perfect fit for him. The other box contains a plum-jaded sword, which would be an ideal weapon for Bin. But since she failed to complete her task, Ju gives Ga-hui authority over the weapon. Ga-hui immediately hands it over to Bin, which further strengthens their bond. After that, Ju-dan states that the real treasure hunt is starting from here on, and that he will test the two on everything he has taught them so far. He promises to show them the true worth of the treasures he has gathered, and as the two begin their new task, time passes by quickly. Finally, the day when the head to the Thousand Martial Academy arrives and a new chapter in their lives begins from there. Ga-hui, Bin Yak, and Ju-dan return to the Zhao clan to pack their stuff for their journey and to say farewell to their family. Before they leave, so he asks him if he will visit on the weekends. Ga-hui's mother is worried about his safety, but he assures her that there's nothing for her to worry about. His sister's so. He asks if he will be visiting every weekend, but to her misery, he explains that the place he is heading to is much further than the hut, so he will only be able to visit one in a couple of months. Lastly, Ju-dan asks him to be on his guard and never hesitate if he has to use his fists. And thus, Bin and Ga-hui both leave out for their journey to the martial realm. Meanwhile, a woman in red is all bruised up and running away from a hunter who is after her life. One day prior to this incident, Ga-hui and Bin are feasting in a restaurant when Bin notices Ga-hui having a sound transmission with the same woman that was being hunted in the woods. It has only been 5 days since they left the clan, yet Ga-hui has become popular among the ladies. As Bin and he argue about whether to camp outside or not, the woman approaches them and starts flirting with Ga-hui. Not knowing how to react, Ga-hui offers her a seat at the table, and she asks him if he is a traveler since the common folks in that area aren't as handsome as him. She offers him a drink for the night, and since Ga-hui is streaming the events, his viewers get overly excited at the sight of her. Bin steps in and asserts that it won't be possible since they are planning on camping outside, and the woman is forced to leave them be. Coming to the present, Ga-hui and Bin notice the woman bruised up and running towards them for help when the hunter asks them to step aside and let him deal with his target. The hunter pulls out their sword and states that the woman is a crimson enchantress, and contrary to her attractive looks, she is a 40-year-old woman who murders men by luring them in. The woman denies all such accusations, but the hunter persists that she is a murderer and has a habit of collecting identification medals of the one she kills. The hunter says that they can confirm her true identity if they don't believe in the story, but the woman continues to deny it all and asks Ga-hui to let her meet other martial artists so they can confirm her identity. Ga-hui states that it is a fair demand and asks the hunter to give her a chance, but as soon as she lets her guard down, he uses his neutralization technique on her and immobilizes her body. As she falls down, Ga-hui pulls out the identification medals from her robe, which confirms that she is indeed a killer. The woman shows her true nature and curses Ga-hui for deceiving her, who in turn says that the things she has done do not compare to it in any way. Afterward, the hunter ties her up and thanks him for the help. Before leaving, the hunter introduces herself as Bayak Liao Gun, who happens to be the first fateful encounter with Ga-hui in the martial realm. Ga-hui was stunned at her beauty until Bin punches him in the gut and snaps him out of his daydreams. Leo asks them where they are headed and learns that they are also headed for the entrance exam at the 1000 Martial Academy. Leo prays good fortune to the two of them and turns her attention to the captured woman who is about to chant some spell, but gets her mouth covered by Leo. Suddenly, the woman disappears in front of their eyes, followed by Leo taking her leave. Her speed shocks Ga-hui as it rivals the Shadow Lotus technique of Judan, which makes him wonder if he will be facing other people like her in the academy. After walking for a while, the duo arrives at Henan, the province where the martial union resides. They enter the building to see it filled with hundreds of martial artists from all over the country, which made it much more difficult to reserve a room for our pair. One of the locals states how the dorm has seen worse days as people would sleep outside 5 years ago during recruiting. As Ga-hui and Bin argue about food, a bunch of men approach them with intent and claim that they are aware of the stuff on his sleeve with say like and subscribe. Ga-hui was both astonished and terrified to learn that he isn't the only one with this power, but quickly learns that these fools have absolutely no idea what they are talking about. They claim to have some connections in the martial union and state that they are always aware of the latest trends in the world. They further claim that this sentence has some hidden power behind it which allows one to become much stronger than the others. Ga-hui jokes about launching this new trend, but looks around to see that all the masters of several clans are wearing attires that say like and subscribe. After getting hit with this insane campaign of like and subscribe, the day of the exam finally arrived, and the hall is filled with a lot more people than it was when Ga-hui and Bin first arrived. Just then, the exam manager asks everyone to quiet down and begins explaining the rules of the examination. He reveals that the test will be held across a total of 5 days and states that this will be much different than the simple hiring of warriors, as it is under a lot more detail and serious protocols. Additionally, funds from all across the country were put into the facilities that will be provided to all participants so they can do their best for the betterment of their country. And thus, the entrance exam for the 1000 Martial Academy begins. The first couple of exam days involve tasks like carrying boulders and races, and the main focus of this test was to determine the strength, agility, and endurance of the participants. Since Bin and Ga-hui had endured harsh training under Judan, they flew through the first 2 days easily, but there were many who couldn't even make it through physical training. On the third day of the exam, nearly half of the participants were disqualified. Meanwhile, Ga-hui looks through the list and is unable to find Liao Gun on it, making him wonder if she applied for a special admission which allows one to be selected through donations. Bin couldn't care less about her and forces Ga-hui to join her for food. However, as they leave, a red-haired veiled woman spies on them from afar. The real struggle begins on the 5th day of the exam, as only the most skilled and extraordinary people are left in the competition. As he inspects all the remaining warriors, a woman sweating from head to toe passes by him, which reminds him of the stench which made him suffer for the first 6 years of his rebirth. Just then, he lays his eyes on the children of the 10-sect alliance and the 5 nobles, which makes him wonder where Wu Hua is, since she belongs to a noble family as well. After that, the exam supervisor for the 5th day, Gam Gapsu, steps onto the stage and reveals that the subject of the last day will be sparring. He further reveals that the participants will not be fighting each other, instead their opponents will be the supervisors, which immediately paints concern on many faces. The exam starts, and all the attendees are sent to a separate sparring stage with their own supervisor. Yak Bin is sent to the 7th stage, where he is paired with none other than Leo, and Ga-hui is selected for stage number 4, and his opponent is the same red-haired veiled woman who was spying on him earlier. She asks Ga-hui if he will be fighting with bare hands, and upon confirmation, she drops her own weapon and decides to go with the classic combat. As she prepares her stance, she urges Ga-hui to make the first move, who in turn, without any hesitation, goes all out in his first attack. He uses his Shadow Lotus technique to achieve amazing speed and attacks the girl head-on, but to his surprise, she manages to dodge it very easily. As Ga-hui barely escapes from her counterattack, she states that it has been a while since she got to spar like this. As she prepares to attack, Ga-hui wonders what she meant by it and whether it was directed toward him or not. His martial art is an integration of mixed arts that even Bin and Hyun have trouble dealing with, which makes him wonder how she is dodging his attacks so easily. The woman mocks him by asking if that is all he has to offer, prompting him to recall the combat technique Wu created for him. He recites the verses of Ki Flow and launches 7 deadly attacks on his opponent, who manages to dodge them easily. However, after dodging the 7th and final attack, she puts her veil onto Ga-hui and holds his hand, making him wonder as to what is happening. On the other hand, Bin surprises Lyo by dodging all her attacks and hence passing the examination. However, Bin is exhausted by doing so and could not get a single opportunity to take the offense, which makes her realize how strong the supervisors are in the academy. Lyo then turns her attention towards stage number 4, where Ga-hui is holding hands with his opponent. As Bin wonders what they are up to, Ga-hui removes the veil on his face to see that the woman she has been facing is none other than Wu Hui. Ga-hui was shocked to see her all grown up. She asks him why he wasn't able to recognize her, and Ga-hui replies that he didn't expect her to be among the supervisors. He asks how she got so far up, but she says that is a story for later and teases him by asking why he did not use any of the neutralization techniques she has taught her. Afterward, he passes the test, and Wu asks him if he is still wearing the bracelet she gave him on their last meetup. As he reveals it from under his gauntlet, Wu reveals that she has been using the same method for hiding it and says that he passes the other test as well. Bin is annoyed at the reunion as she watches it from afar, and Wu decides to walk Ga-hui around the grounds since there is some time left until the opening ceremony. After she shows him all the main buildings of the academy, Ga-hui asks her to give him some space for a moment. Oh, and Bin, there is there too, by the way. Wu thinks Ga-hui doesn't want her anymore after all these years, but Ga-hui states that she is the only reason he came so far. Seeing him reunite with Wu, Bin has started to cling to him all of a sudden. As he scolds her to give him space, he gets shocked to finally see Lyo. Not knowing that she is among the supervisors, Ga-hui tells her how worried he was when he couldn't find her name on the list. She realizes that Bin didn't mention her role in the academy, and Ga-hui is shocked to learn the truth. Ga-hui starts scolding Bin about not telling him earlier, which prompts her to kick him in the gut and run away in anger. Lyo states she had no intention of hiding it and thought Ga-hui would easily pass the exam, who in turn says he never thought someone so young could be an instructor in the academy. Wu becomes jealous hearing the two talk so casually and says that they should head back since it is time for the entrance ceremony. In the ceremony, there was an intimidating old man, whose white hair had passed his shoulders in length and his beard was as gray as the age he lived. Although he looked older by the hair, his body was exempt and untethered by time. His firm shoulders and upright posture resembled a huge mountain range, and his eyes shared the same benevolent gaze as the youth. This old man was the 81-year-old Yeonung Chien, the leader of the White Path and the head of the martial union. The countless achievements he attained with the sword are still considered a legend in the martial realm, which has earned him a great deal of respect from martial artists. But even he had his flaws. While the students fall asleep in the hall hearing the long lecture, Yu explains that the academy will be scheduled semester-wise in 4 months of training and 2 months of vacation. Ga-hui himself is bored during the long speech and closes his eyes to watch some YouTube and gets scolded by one of the supervisors who think he is sleeping in broad daylight. After the speech, Ga-hui learns that people have already started giving nicknames around the place, and the one he got is the Playboy Young Master. Ga-hui recalls how both Bin and Wu were latching onto him all the time, which may be the reason people started calling him a playboy. Later, the entrance ceremony ended, which gave a new beginning to Ga-hui's life. Meanwhile, after receiving his identification medal and the course registration form, Ga-hui decides to head back to his room to plan out his courses, but Wu and Bin latching onto him all the time has now become natural. This dual escort thing has become a sore sight for jealous eyes, making one of them step up and ask Wu Hui to spend some time with him. Wu addresses him as Yeon and asks why can't they converse here. Yeon, with a sinister smile, asks him what courses he plans on taking. She says that she hasn't decided on any yet, but continues to act like a freak, and Wu, who has been acting nice until now, decides that it's time to teach him a lesson. As he reaches his hand out to touch her, Ga-hui steps in and stops him, claiming that Wu clearly isn't comfortable talking to him. As the crowd gathers around thinking they are going to brawl, Un steps back knowing he is no match for the three of them. Later in Ga-hui's room, he and Wu were planning their courses, and he learns that she is coincidentally enrolled in all the same courses as him. Ga-hui wonders how Bin is doing with her courses when Wu gets a little too close to Ga-hui, making him sweat in nervousness. She politely asks him if he knows how she became a supervisor and reveals that she made a bet to defeat all the prominent clan members in a spar. After winning the bet, she purposely paired herself with Ga-hui in the final exam so she can be closer to her dear. As she leans in to kiss him, he recalls how Wu-hui was just a kid when they first met, and how he only decided to befriend her in order to protect her. In addition to that, he had already received one strike on his channel earlier, and this inappropriate activity is being live-streamed right now, which prompts him to push Wu-hui away. However, he uses a little too much force and falls on top of her, making her blush all of a sudden. As his live chat threatens to report his channel, he begs them not to, as it was only a mistake. He claims that it was only training for the neutralization technique which he and Wu practiced as kids. Wu-hui is embarrassed to her core and leaves the room, claiming she has something important to do. As he leaves, Ga-hui's chat continues to tease him about the excitement, which further annoys him. Just then, he hears Bin asking what the two of them were doing. During the next day's course, the monk in charge addressed the entire class, emphasizing that in the martial realm there exist many masters who are significantly stronger than anyone present. He advised that if by chance one were to encounter such a master, it would not be considered shameful to join forces with others to fight them. Even for prodigies who are expected to follow the path of righteousness, they are all novices at best and should regularly train with their comrades to establish good synergy. While the monk was lecturing, Ga-hui found it challenging to concentrate. He was preoccupied with the fact that Bin had not mentioned anything about the previous day, and this conundrum consumed his thoughts. Meanwhile, his chat informed him that Wu-hui had been staring at him maniacally. When Ga-hui turned to face her, she appeared to be perfectly normal, but the chat insisted that she had been fixated on him, even likening her to a yandere. The teacher monk noticed that Ga-hui was not focused and startled him to bring his attention back to the class. The monk reminded everyone that if they encounter a master like him, they should do their best not to be caught off guard like Ga-hui just was. The teacher then assigned everyone into pairs, and unfortunately for Ga-hui, Bin and Wu-hui were paired together. This caused him to be startled. The teacher then assigned Ga-hui's seal Ina, whom Ga-hui recognized as the girl with the foul stench. Hoping that the smell was a figment of his imagination, Ga-hui approached Seal and extended his hand, expressing that he was pleased to be on her team. However, Seal was annoyed by him and told him not to come too close, calling him a playboy young master. Ga-hui was perplexed as to why Seal was being so hostile towards him and asked her about it. Seal replied that her associate had warned her about Ga-hui's smile, and that a single misstep could result in her becoming a slave to the playboy young master. She went on to say that Ga-hui should be proud of this title because he was simply using his appearance, which could also be a potent weapon to prey on the weak, and that it was the law of nature. Seal's mother had done the same thing by using her beauty to marry the strongest person in Bai-hai. Before Seal could continue, the associate she mentioned made her entrance and interrupted them. The associate warned Seal to be cautious of Ga-hui. The associate recognized Ga-hui and commented that she knew him well. She observed that he had girls following him like glue ever since his first day in the academy, but before she could continue her thought, the teacher called her up to her class, and she got to hurry off. Ga-hui and Seal then began their synchronized attack art training. They sparred with some youths, and Seal impressed Ga-hui with her magical power. He complimented her, and she returned the compliment but added that the energy coming from his body was insignificant. She couldn't understand how he could exert such power. As they talked, Ga-hui confirmed that the foul stench was not a figment of his imagination. He later determined that the stench was only present in Seal, and not everyone from Bai-hai had it. Ga-hui purchases a significant amount of soap for his classmates and instructor, with plans to learn the manufacturing method for deodorant as well. Additionally, he intends to address Seal's stench problem and turn it into a YouTube video for content. However, his chat disagrees with his intentions, believing that he merely wants to expand his group of female companions. While out and about, Ga-hui recognizes a familiar face in Lady Byac. After following her for a brief period, he observes her speaking with an information broker. Ga-hui notices that her gaze and expressions are significantly different from usual, as is her aura. With only an hour left until his curfew, he is faced with a difficult decision on what to do. Despite the risk of breaking curfew, Ga-hui decides to follow Lady Byac, concerned about his instructor's safety. Eventually, Lady Byac arrives at the broker's destination. However, she is suspicious of the location, a small wooden cabin located in the middle of the forest. Lady Byac expresses her concerns to the broker, who appears perplexed by her doubts. He tells her that she can leave if she doesn't trust him, but Lady Byac draws her sword, indicating her readiness to proceed into the cabin. Inside the cabin, there is a hidden passage where assassins and goons are ready to strike Lady Byac down. One of them acknowledges that Lady Byac is the Sword Empress and shouldn't be taken lightly, even in her incomplete state. The assassin warns his comrade not to let their guard down, as even though she hasn't fully earned her title, she has defeated many masters. Thanks to Ga-hui's powers, he found out about the planned ambush, and the chat tells him that they had informed him of this as well. Ga-hui has a plan and he lifts his coat, revealing Gordon Ratsay in the pocket. As Lady Bayek grows impatient, she asks the broker how much further they have to go. Suddenly, the broker reveals his true colors and his team of assassins attack Lady Bayek. However, Lady Bayek is a skilled fighter, and she easily defeats multiple assassins with her Mu's Shadow Assault reversal technique. This leaves the remaining 2 assassins and the broker scared. Lady Bayek quickly defeats the remaining 2 assassins and confronts the broker. He tells her that he heard this generation's Sword Empress was crueler rather than skilled, but Lady Bayek confirms that she has no choice but to be ruthless since she lacks the skills. She readies her sword to kill the broker, but he has other plans. He reveals that he has a bomb and he intends to take her with him. Lady Bayek recognizes the Thunderbolt bomb and the broker reveals that there are more bombs hidden throughout the cave. If even one explodes, the entire cave will collapse and even her exceptional abilities won't save her. Lady Bayek, while not being afraid of death, wants to face the one who killed her master before she dies. She asks the broker if he's willing to die with her and reminds him that if he had kept his promise and given her the information about the golden-eyed demon, this could have been avoided. Despite Lady Bayek's wishful thinking that she could find information about the golden-eyed demon, the broker claims he knows nothing about him and suggests that Lady Bayek's desire for revenge made it easy for him to lure her into a trap. In exchange for sparing her life, the broker proposes that Lady Bayek give him one of her arms to show his commissioner. However, Lady Bayek has a different plan. She decides to take the broker's arm to prevent him from triggering the bomb. Before she can act, Senior Azure Blade attacks her, leaving her surprised that such a famous figure would help trap a young girl. He admits that money can make him do anything, and informs her that he's not alone in wanting the head of the Sword Empress. As he finishes his sentence, projectiles are launched at Lady Bayek from behind, paralyzing her partially. Just as things start to escalate, a masked man comes to her rescue. Lady Bayek asks him who he is, and he reveals himself to be someone she's always wanted to meet. The conversation was abruptly cut short as Senior Azure Blade launched another attack. However, to everyone's astonishment, the masked man halted his sword strike with his bare hands and pushed him back effortlessly. While this spectacle unfolded, Senior Verdant Plains, the person who had earlier thrown projectiles at Lady Bayek, watched keenly and arrived at a conclusion. The masked man was either hiding something or possessed the fundamental return, a martial phenomenon that made a practitioner's prowess appear ordinary. Without any hesitation, the man began hurling projectiles at the masked man, convinced that he couldn't stand by and watch any longer. But Lady Bayek quickly shielded the masked man, only to be struck by a barrage of acorns and nuts. To her surprise, the man had swapped Senior Verdant Plains' deadly projectiles for harmless ones, leaving him fuming with anger. The masked man stood there, silent and expressionless as Senior Azure Blade was ordered to cease his attacks and Senior Verdant Plains steps forward. He then proceeded to ask the masked man if he was from the Imperial family, but he received no definitive answer. Senior Verdant Plains then questioned him about the fate of Imperial family if someone like him is found to be existent. The masked man stood speechless, unable to answer the daunting question. Before the conversation could proceed any further, Lady Bayek suddenly fainted. At the young age of 27, the woman who inherited the title of the Sword Empress was already the subject of numerous rumors. It was said that she had an insatiable desire for revenge against unorthodox martial arts masters, whom she hunted down and killed during her 7-year-long travels. However, it was also whispered that she wielded an incomplete sword technique due to losing half of it somehow, which made her even more dangerous as she had still managed to attain the level of a transcendent. Despite all the rumors that circulated about her, Lady Bayek paid them no mind. It had been 12 long years since the demonic head had killed her master in a cowardly manner and disappeared without a trace. She could never forget the way he had looked at her with his yellow gaze and the sight of his hands around her beloved master. But Lady Bayek was determined to avenge her master's death, and rumors about the Sword Empress were of little consequence to her. Within the confines of the cave, Lady Bayek lay unconscious, her body succumbing to the venom from the poisonous needle. Senior Verdant Plains made the grim proclamation that there was no saving the Sword Empress now. He mocked the masked man Ga-hui for his attempts to save Lady Bayek, telling him it was all in vain and to give up. However, Ga-hui was not deterred. He produced a legendary treasure, the poison-evading orb, and instructed Lady Bayek to bite on it. Senior Verdant Plains was taken aback by the orb, realizing that it could cure any type of toxin. He demanded to know who Ga-hui was and why he had such a treasure, incredulous that someone would carry such a valuable item in their shabby clothes. Ga-hui explained that he had received the orb from someone else, leaving Senior Verdant Plains even more confused. The information broker grew impatient and yelled at the senior twins to stop hesitating, reminding them that he still had the Thunderbolt bomb. However, Ga-hui calmly revealed that he had already removed the bombs from the cave and closed off all the entrances. The broker didn't believe him, so Ga-hui told him to ask Senior Verdant Plains, confident that he now understood Ga-hui's abilities. As the situation unfolded, the chat couldn't help but laugh at the exchange. Ga-hui then confidently challenges the senior twins to fight him, warning them that they should not forget that the Sword Empress will soon awaken and recover her ki, making them unable to survive her wrath. He gives them the ultimatum of either dying in humiliation or begging for mercy, leaving all three of them defeated and humiliated. Ga-hui then safely leaves the cave with Lady Bayuk, taking her to a secure location for her to recover her strength. As it turns out, all of the tactics Ga-hui used, such as removing the bombs and blocking the entrance, were mere bluffs that worked in his favor, with Gordon Ratsay also assisting him. Since Lady Bayuk is still unconscious, Ga-hui decides to move her to a safer place for her to recover her ki. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.